Good afternoon, everybody. Very nice to see you all. I assume you all have some interest in games or gamification. Have any of you actually used games or gamification in e-learning yet? No? And just out of interest, anybody here creating e-learning? A few people? Excellent. And rest of you involved in e-learning in some way? It's not just raining outside? Okay. Well, welcome. I was just doing some very frightening counting on my fingers and realized that in 3 years, this is going up and down, is it? In 3 years' time, it will be 40 years since I created my first game. So I'm horribly old. And after a few years of doing it, I found myself running games for a company called Atari in America. And I had teams responsible for producing games on, this is in and out. Is there anything we can do about this? Games on coin-operated machines like Last Starfighter, stuff on the computers, stuff on the games machines, and it was a very interesting, exciting time. When games started, it was quite easy to produce them. Everything was fairly quick and not too involved. So we used to produce games from everything. If you could think of it, you could create a game from it. So it might be throwing darts, it might be billiards, pool, racing a motorbike, and it was very quick to put things together. Now the games industry has changed quite a lot, and an average game costs more now to produce than a major film, so you have to really get it right. However, we have more freedom in training. So, looking at what a game is, why would we want to get games involved with our learning, with our education? A game in itself is a learning system. Inherently, you cannot progress or do well with a game or win a game unless you're doing some learning. So, they are inherently a learning activity. And they're an activity that has potentially many outcomes. Now, maybe it's just win or lose, but there are many different ways of reaching that outcome. And with many games, it's about score. So there are obviously many potential score outcomes that can come from that. All games tend to have a built-in opportunity to improve. And my personal opinion is that games need to be fun. Some of my colleagues actually don't agree. They say games just need to be challenging, but I find challenge quite fun. Who here thinks that games need to be fun to be a game? I definitely think they do. What is it otherwise? So I want to just draw a little distinction because there are other things we use in e-learning. We use games, we use puzzles, we use gamification. Puzzles are games in a sense, but they only have one solution. So you can't kind of reuse puzzles in the same way that you can reuse a game. But I'm going to cover how we use those and how we can use those as well as games. Gamification seems to be the buzzword of the day. Gamification is just about taking game elements and using them to motivate people. And this is from my smartwatch app here. Tells me how fast I've run, how far I've walked, and many other things. The idea is it will motivate me, and there are days when it's painful to get out and run, so perhaps it does help to know that you're going to get an improved time or another badge or something like that. But we're coming across it everywhere. And my son, who's 15, the only revision that he will happily do is using this tool called Memrise. And Memrise has French and physics and loads of other stuff. He's working up to his GCSEs. I'm sure many people know people doing that this time of year and taking them. And yeah, he'll spend ages on Memrise because it's fun and you can gamify it. You can set your own themes. You can do all sorts of interesting things, and you can compete with your friends. And he does. He has groups of friends he's competing with, which is good because he's competing with them in the GCSEs too. So I know from hands-on experience that even a sulky 15-year-old can be got to learn through a game, and they are, I believe, the hardest target audience available. Okay, so how do you actually use a game in e-learning? Now, I'm talking here about a game specifically rather than gamification. And the first time I attempted this was with this one. And it's quite interesting because I haven't used a game to teach. I've used a game as an analogy. And I'm going to play you this and let you hear it.
Do you understand what's expected of you in your job? Does it matter if you don't? Here's a quick game for you to play. You can see the instructions here. Click Start.
Now, before you make any comments about my game design capability, I have to tell you this intended to be a bad game. And so you may say, well, why would you design a bad game? And the answer is to show the difference between a bad game and a good game. And I thought it might be quite an interesting thing to see today.
You've reached the finish line. Would you like to play again? If not, Click here to continue.
So, what did you think of that game? It's not really surprising that you feel this way. A game like this is pretty pointless if you don't know at the outset what you're supposed to be doing. In fact, considering how little information you were given, you were lucky to get instructions on how to move the spaceship. Even if you did think it was fun, how long do you think that feeling would last if you never knew how well you had done? Without any sense of achievement, you'd probably lose interest very quickly.
Have another go. The objective of the game is to get to the end of the course as quickly as you can, and to catch as many pieces of space treasure as possible as you go. Follow the instructions here to move the spaceship, and use the scoop to catch the treasure. You can see how you're doing as you go, and at the end, we'll calculate your score.
Okay, I'm going to let that finish there. So what we're doing there is we're saying that the more you can make setting goals and objectives for your team like a game, the better that they're going to respond, and the more that people are going to get out of their work, and the more you're going to get out of them. So it's quite interesting, isn't it, that here we're using a game to teach, but actually in a completely different way, a completely backwards way. So I thought it was quite a fun example and a little bit different. This is one of the most advanced games that I've put into a piece of e-learning, and we've just completed this for a customer. The course teaches behavioral economics, which is the science of how consumers make decisions, and we're trying to help sales and marketing people understand how to design effective choices. Now, what we've done here is we've done a survey with 100 real consumers of a number of decision-making factors. So we've said to them, right, you want to buy cloud storage. Which of these things would most attract you to go into a store selling cloud storage? We know it's probably online. And then which decision would you choose given these options? So we've weighted all these factors, and we've got 100 people to do this. What we've then done is...
Welcome to Game Town. This is where you can practice thinking about some of the behavioral economic principles in 5 different environments. Your aim is to make it easy for people to make decisions about the items they need to buy. To make the game interesting, we've surveyed 100 people to see how they would respond to the same choices, and each of the agents in the game represents the views of a real person, which means there are no right answers as you're dealing with a cross-section of people, and what's good for one person is not good for another. You'll be presented with decisions to design in each environment. Once you've completed them all, submit your choices and see the results. You'll be able to refine your choices twice. After the 3rd round of the game, you will see a final score. Here's how you play. Select each shop to make or amend your choices. In each shop, tapping or clicking on a choice will enlarge it. When you're happy with your choices, select play to start a round. As a round is playing, you can speed up or slow down the shoppers with this control. When the round is finished, you'll see a summary of your results so far. Select each result for more detail and compare how you've done in each round.
Okay, one of the choices actually involved the train and how you bought your tickets and stuff. What's interesting about this is that it works just as well on a phone. So here we have it on the big screen, but I've been showing it to people on a phone, and people take it out of my hands and start playing it. So it's extremely effective even when in a sort of miniaturized format like that. So that's a very interesting game. Now, you'd think that because you're only making a few choices there, that there probably wouldn't be that many outcomes. And in fact, we were slightly worried about that for doing a high score table, because one of the things we've done for the customer here is we've written a high score server that works outside of the learning management system, so that the game itself can communicate with the high score server and can share scores throughout the organization. When we did the calculations, it turned out that there were, from this one round, 59,000 possible outcomes. And because you play it across 3 rounds, because it's designed to teach people to make and refine choices, there were over 7 trillion possible outcomes. So we figured that there was enough variation in there to legitimately call it a game. Here's another example of use of game. This one's slightly different. This is designed just to increase observation and concentration. We took a piece of video that the customer already had, and I've edited this, so this is you're not going to see the whole of it, but I'll let it run.
In this piece of video, it's a scenario that may or may not have happened. You'll see the behaviours in action. As you watch it, please look for the behaviours and record them here.
And we use that several times, picking out customer service details and other things. So it's a bingo game. The idea is you just get house, but what we're doing is it's just making you concentrate. So anything that gets our learners focused on the game is fair game. Moving to gamification, what we do with that. This is an example of a security training video, training course. Not the most interesting thing in the world. And what we've done is we've required you to get a set number of badges to complete. So this is just a very quick demonstration of that.
Here's your final question for this section. Read the scenario and decide what you would do. You've demonstrated a good practical understanding of the information security in action. You can skip the review and move on directly to the next section.
Nice thing about badges is they can transfer to the certificates, they can transfer to the LMS open badges, and people can travel around with them as well if you can keep them. Sometimes we use games, puzzles and gamification all in the same thing. This is an example of, and I'm going to probably just fast forward through a little bit of this, but this is an example of where we've set up a situation as a game, but it's a whole course.
Welcome, agent. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to make your service as good as it can be for your customers. This mission will self-destruct on completion. Good luck.
The mission is in 2 parts. The first is to learn about the 5 essential elements of great customer service and demonstrate your skills to earn a Mission Possible badge for each of them. The second is to learn how to deliver under pressure, the pressure of an angry customer. You'll also need to demonstrate your skills to earn your 6th Mission Possible badge. Move on now to start the first part of your mission.
We were particularly proud of License to Skill.
Any bad customer service makes our mission difficult, if not impossible. To make sure you don't jeopardise the Council's mission, we're going to look at missions that failed, not in the Council, obviously, so you can identify what went wrong. As each video plays, choose the likeliest reason for mission failure.
Then you fill in the serial number, scan the item and give the top copy to the customer, okay?
Right. Fill it in, scan it and tear it off.
That's right. But don't leave any gaps in the serial number, right?
Thanks. Find this really confusing.
It just takes a bit of getting used to, that's it. Okay then?
A responsive agent is observant and focused.
To be responsive to our customers requires some specific skills and approaches to work. We included 5 of them in this puzzle. Can you identify them? They're all composed of 2 words. You'll need to work harder for this Mission Possible badge. It includes 2 tasks. Here's the first one.
Barbara works in reception of a busy health group. Watch how she handles Steve and assess her performance. Which alert steps did she complete successfully?
I can't believe it. They've sent me back here again. Isn't there anybody in this place who knows what they're doing? Nobody knows anything, nobody cares, nobody wants to help. My 3-year-old could do a better job than all you...
Here's the second alert task.
Barbara is handling Steve differently this time. Can you match her words with the alert step?
Review Barbara's approach to alert. As you do, think about how you might use alert.
So again, you get badges and so forth as you go through that, but the whole thing has puzzles, it has games, and has gamified elements. It's quite interesting. One little lesson, if you do any of your own games there, adding a timer to anything definitely makes it more interesting. It's not always fair, but particularly for a final challenge on something, I think it really works quite well, and it does get the adrenaline going. Some other things in the games industry, if you're putting together something like Halo or recently Star Wars Battlefront as a new one, what they tend to do is they have things called cutscenes between chapters. So you have a game piece, and then you'll have a sort of cutaway where the protagonists are actually having a discussion or something's going on. So we're starting to use some very high quality video cutscenes in things as well.
What's it going to be? Well, I don't have a favourite beer, Ed. Me neither. We should evaluate the difference between these two. One's twice the price of the other. But does that mean it tastes twice as good? I think if we didn't try it, we'd always be wondering, Ed. Have we made the wrong choice? Okay. So let's treat ourselves. Let's go for the €2 beer.
I don't know if you actually go through dialogues like that in your head when you're choosing beers, but it was on behavioural economics again, and we just thought we'd give an insight into thinking as a bit of fun in that. And just taking simple things, sound effects and animation, this is a very simple question that's just been made a little bit more interesting by using some of those elements.
What do you know already about driving efficiently? What do you think of this driver's efforts? Is this an economical driving style? This is not...
So let's see if we can get that moved on. Okay, so why aren't we using games everywhere? Because you'd think if they're that good, we would be. I think games are seen as very expensive, and they can be. You can spend a lot of money on developing a game, but you can also do them very cheaply. Time. Games take time to design, develop and test. Often people are in a rush for their e-learning. They want stuff done yesterday. But sometimes it is really worth it because a simple game can put stuff across so effectively. So you sometimes just have to take the time. They do take time. Skills, people think they're difficult to create. They are, but I'm going to talk to you in a minute about some ways you can do that without having major game skills. And I have had organisations say we don't want to use a game or we don't use gamification because this is very serious stuff. And I really think that's a mistake because probably the most serious thing you can do is to go into battle and fight. And how do you teach that? And the answer is games. And I don't think it's about being serious or being light-hearted. I think that games and play simply are a very, very effective learning method. So I think it's one that you know should be overcome. So what are the options? There's an enormous amount of open source content out there. I did a search yesterday just before doing this presentation, and we came up with about 800 open source HTML5 games that were freely available through GitHub. So if you need to, if you are developing an HTML5 game, you can go search on GitHub and you can probably find something that you can repurpose to your requirements. There's almost anything on there, sort of from Mario Brothers downwards. So I'm not quite sure how that got there because it's copyright. So open source content's available. You can use freely. For that behavioral economics game I just showed you, we used a game engine called Phaser. And Phaser requires a little bit of programming capability, but it has scoreboards, it has the sprites and things you need to move around. It makes it very, very easy to create a game. It cuts down the programming just enormously. It probably cuts it to 1/10 of what it would be if you had to start from scratch. And if you're really ambitious and you want to do something with a 3D world, or you're starting to look at VR headsets, the Unity game engine is what's used for the big Xbox games and PC games, and it's freely available to you. If you're an organisation doing over 100,000 in turnover, which to be honest most of our customers are very much in excess of that. You have to pay a little bit. It's about $75 a month to use it. But the nice thing about both Phaser and Unity is if you create games with them, they're going to work on iOS, they're going to work on Android, they're going to work on PC. And if you're feeling like it, you could get them to work on Xbox. I've also thought that's a really good idea, actually. I don't think anybody's ever come out with the Xbox e-learning, but I think it'd be worth doing. So Phaser and Unity are very helpful. And of course, you can come to somebody like us and say we'd like a game, and outsource it. Are they effective? This is a meta-study by UC Denver Business School. And I think the most important thing is it found that people who learnt through games versus other methods came out with a 20% higher belief that they could carry out the task effectively. So on all fronts, facts and skills developed, etc., games came out ahead in actual tests, so were shown as very effective. And are they worth it? What do you get from them? Well, you can engage people. You reduce their self-consciousness if you give people practice. You can read as well as I can. So many benefits from utilizing games as part of your e-learning. And it really isn't that hard to do. There are simpler game development programming systems you can use, and quite a few of the authoring systems have game elements available, gamification elements available. So I would encourage anybody to try it as part of what they're doing. And I think that's it. So any questions? Yes? Yes? Mm-hmm. Okay, let me repeat that back. This gentleman teaches people how to utilize databases across Europe, and it's he's wondering how he could use a game to do that. I think obviously it depends on precisely what you're teaching them, and it needs a bit of consideration. But I think that if you want them to be able to do it with low error rates and quickly, you could start a game where you're having to perform tasks. You could accelerate them. You can measure error rates. You can get them to compete with themselves in terms of cutting down error rates and accelerating how they do it. So I'm pretty sure you could use those principles. And not to mention, I assume that there are elements to the skill. If you build a sort of badge base based on the skill elements that they need in order to be able to do the job, then again you can challenge people and have them work to develop those. So I'm pretty sure you could. I have a feeling you could probably do an awful lot more, but you'd need to know more about your particular requirement. Any? Interesting thought. I'll see if I can post something. Yeah, good idea. The gentleman was saying it would be nice to have a checklist of the sorts of things that he could do, and I'll look at whether we can do that. Anything else I can? Any other questions? I don't know if this has been useful for you. It's really to show some examples. Oh, lady in the back. Sorry? Do I have a blog? As a company, we have social media accounts and so forth, and we have a blog on our website. It's engageinlearning.com. I will be putting this on it, so you can certainly do that. And I'm hoping on some of the games we're doing now there'll be some additional follow-up blogs. So yes, definitely. Just look at engaginglearning.com. Could you repeat it? Could you say what's the question? Games in the compliance space. We've done quite a few. I think the answer is that they're extremely effective because compliance training can become, you're focused on a lot of factual information. So it's definitely a good space to use it in. I think any of those game methods will work. So focus and attention through things like the bingo, problems, any form of problem solving, I think would apply very effectively to it. And as I say, we have done some stuff in that space. Some of the stuff that I showed you effectively is in the compliance space. So it's definitely usable, and I'd really encourage it. The thing I'm getting most push on in the compliance space at the moment is time efficiency. So, for example, we do work with Nationwide Building Society, and they do right across the company. They do their compliance, health and safety training every October. So every year we are pushed for how can we maintain the efficiency and reduce the time. And I think we pulled 5 or 6 minutes out this year in various improvements. So that's what they tend to be looking for. And what we've done is not a game as such, but what we have added in is pre-testing and stuff like that, which helps. But games tend to take a little while, but there is a payoff. So I'm not really sure. Is there resistance? I think that's the only resistance that I'm aware of would be based on time, because you have to get everybody through your compliance training. You have to do it quickly. What we used a lot of storytelling in compliance training. We found that extremely effective. But I've not come across any specific resistance to it in that, and I wouldn't really expect it. I think some of the stuff you tend to do in compliance training is wandering around health and safety, spotting fire hazards, things like that. Is a good opportunity. So can you spot all the hazards? I have actually got examples of where you're looking at different environments, you're picking out the trip hazards, you're doing things like that. So yeah, I mean, we use them as little short games, and I don't think there's any significant resistance. Sorry, I stalled a bit on that, don't know why. Oh, thank you very much. Apparently I'm contagious. I think he means my enthusiasm.